Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We've had an interesting morning. Is that better? How's that? We had an interesting morning delving into the theory of digital entrepreneurialism, but now I think we have a real hard news story, something that's taken place over the last decade, many twists and turns. It's a fascinating narrative, and I think it teaches us many lessons about entrepreneurialism and about the new media. And I have with me two of the men who were the main protagonists, negotiators, actors, and authors in the whole saga. On my left, Ihsan Jawad, who began his career as an investment banker and has, for the past decade or so, become a serial entrepreneur. I don't think he would object to being called a serial entrepreneur. No, it's rather an honor these days, isn't it? And on the other side, Basil Moftah, who is a Reuters lifetime staffer, but who has done various jobs at Reuters, and their paths crossed in the story of Zawya, which, as some of you may know, is the best-known, most authoritative online source for business information and news in the Middle East region. Very briefly, the story is that this company, Zawya, was started by Ihsan round about the turn of the century, came to Dubai in 2002 or so, and was sold last year to ThomsonReuters for a fee of, no, I'm sorry, I can't say what the fee was. We may get round to that in the course of questions, I hope, or in the course of discussion. But Ihsan, if I can start with you, I'd like really to plumb down into it and ask you what the impetus for the launch of Zawya was back then. Was it a marketing opportunity? Did you see a technological imperative? What gave you the idea? Where did it come from?
Well, the simple answer basically is there was it's a content gap. So when it came to business information, the only provider at the time was Reuters, actually. But very much Reuters was catering for the top investment companies here that are looking to invest in the European markets and the US markets, the developed markets. So I came from the local content perspective. There was just a huge gap in sort of business information at the local level.
Right.
And we basically spent a good decade filling that gap.
Right.
In a profitable way. That's the idea.
Why was that gap there? Why wasn't the world looking for information before that about the Middle East, do you think?
Well, I mean, okay, that's a big question. It's a philosophical question. Reuters, actually, who's I think in the region, you've been here since 1912 or something like that?
Yeah.
Something crazy like.
Of course, Reuters was doing business in the region,
yes.
Was providing information about business in the region too. But
right.
My question really is asking, why did you start up this service,
yeah, I mean,
and why didn't Reuters, for example, start it up of its own accord earlier?
So the internet changed that. The internet basically leveled the playing field in terms of distribution. So if you had business information that you wanted to distribute, you had basically, it used to be just basically magazines and so forth, right? But the internet, if you wanted access to lively business information, you had to basically hire a Reuters terminal or a Bloomberg terminal, which has you plug it into the network and so forth. It was a very expensive investment from the consumer or the corporate, if you like. So the internet basically took all that away, and suddenly it became much more viable to build an information business.
Accessible, yeah. You had access to information and a platform that you could get it to the public.
The distribution cost went to zero, basically.
Okay. And this was always a subscription model, was it? Because the feeling at the time, I remember in the broader media, was that you should offer for free and build up brand awareness. You always went with a subscription model.
Well, actually, when we started, we first started in London in 2000. When we started, it was an advertising-based model. I mean, before the advertising sort of models collapsed, advertising revenues collapsed in late 2000. We also came to realize that if you're going to sell, if you're going to provide sort of solid, high-quality business information, then you can actually charge for it, and the corporates would be happy to pay a premium. So it was easy for us to switch models. At the end, we ended up with a 70-30 split, 70 subscriptions, 30 advertising.
Right.
Which is the best of the two worlds, really.
I get it. Basil, these are corporate deals, of course, but they are done by human beings. There had to be a personal element in this, and I know that there is a story behind how you two first encountered each other. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, I mean, Ihsan first gave me actually a call in 2000. I was working in California at the time for Reuters in the venture capital arm out there, and basically said, listen, I have this idea, it's great, it's called Zawya, I want to do this, your name looks Arab, so I want to talk to you. And I said, okay, sure, let's have the conversation. We did talk about it, but ultimately turned it down at the time, basically said, go make it happen, and if you can make it happen, then we'll talk. But too small, not interested, not really our cup of tea, and we were more interested in what was happening in California at the time. So we dismissed, if you like, from a Reuters perspective, the idea as being something substantial for us at the time. Now, Ihsan's a very resilient entrepreneur, I have to say, and doesn't take no for an answer. And that relationship kept evolving over time. So, he did make it happen ultimately, obviously. But he did that by also partnering with Reuters at some point and took content and information from us as a package, as part of the package that he provided his customers. And then he got so good at it that we decided that he was a competitor and that we didn't want to give him any more information. So we actually cut the feeds and told him, you can no longer have information from us, and sent him packing again, thinking that this time he would go away. But he didn't.
I see. So he went from being partner to rival.
From partner to competitor. And I think it's an interesting, Ihsan can probably add more about his perspective on that. I tried to, get rid of that business a few times, couldn't, then bought it. So that was the only way we could solve that problem in the end.
Well, if you can't beat them, buy them, I suppose.
Exactly.
That's one way for an exit, yeah.
Is the answer, yeah. But what Reuters, of course, or Thomson Reuters, is in the information business, big time. That's your core operation. What in particular, and this goes back to my earlier question about why the rest of the world wasn't looking at the Middle East, what in particular attracted you are from the region, to the Zawya operation then?
Listen, there are three things, right? I think, first of all, the discipline that the business had in building a subscription business. There are too many people who give away content for free in the region. And, Ihsan's Zawya team made it a point to say, if this is going to be a real business, we're going to charge people for it. And if customers don't like it, they don't like it, right? And I think that's something to admire and to look at. I think the other part is the brand. The Zawya brand was probably larger than life. It established itself as a very credible source, and a lot of money was spent on building that brand. And for Thomson Reuters, that's an attraction because clearly it gives a positioning around serving this local region. And then ultimately the customers. He went after good customers. There were lots of banks, corporations. Zawya had a really A-class set of customers. And again, for a strategic buyer, a global corporation like ours, when you come to buy a business, you look at who those customers are, because if the customers are Mickey Mouse customers, it's not interesting. If the customers are substantial customers, well-known names, you buy it. So, I don't want to get into also the company is well-run, proper accounting. I assume everybody here, and we heard it, earlier this morning, the basic, background of a company has to be well-established. That was there. Sort of the unique things about Zawya were the brand and the customer list.
Right. Ihsan, at this stage, we're approaching 2006, 2007, I guess. A sale is still on your mind. You have other shareholders, of course, who also have a sale imperative. Why didn't it happen then, at the peak of the pre-crisis market?
The simple answer is we were too greedy, I think.
You were too greedy?
Yeah, basically.
You had other bids, did you?
Yeah, we had quite a few bids in 2008. And I think I remember one of the board members thought this is going to be a $500 million company. So, needless to say, we did not. The transaction is less than 500 million. So, so we turned down some of those transactions. We ended up. We were close to a final exit actually at the peak of 2008, but at a substantially higher number than what we ended up in at the end with Reuters. But the financial crisis hit in November 2008, and things were put on hold.
So Lehman Brothers came along and derailed what was a much bigger deal.
Made me less rich.
Made you less rich?
Yeah.
Less rich is an interesting phrase, isn't it? Okay. But as a kind of philosophical, as a theoretical question, why hadn't you IPO'd by that stage? Was the strategy always to look for a trade buyer?
I don't know. The public markets are still not ready, really, for
in the region.
Yeah, definitely. They're far from it in terms of understanding and investing in let's say intangible assets, so to speak. Cash flow businesses. I don't think the public markets were ready. I don't think they will be ready for a while.
Right.
For media/technology companies.
I mean, despite the fact of the MSC upgrade and that kind of thing that's lifted the markets, you think there still are obstacles?
Look, I mean, I think the retail investors, which is ultimately what supports public markets, is it's a long way in terms of being educated on how to value these kind of businesses.
Yeah. Basil, were you then? We're talking now about 2008. Were you then aware of the existence of other interested parties and of the rather big sum that was on the table, or that was being asked then? How far does your due diligence go here?
Yeah, I think we were always aware. I mean, again, we kept the relationship. I would say, Ihsan did a great job to stay in touch with ThomsonReuters, even when we cut the feed and cut the business and decided that, you should get his information from someone else. He always stayed in touch. I think that was important. So we were aware. We knew others were looking at it. I think it's a small market, and there's a lot of sort of information that's shared informally across the market about transactions. But again, I think everybody was caught up at the time with the global sort of expansion. This was all pre-Lehman, obviously, and there was a lot of other activities happening that, we weren't necessarily going to make a move at that point, or weren't interested to make a move at that point. I think when we did get interested is when the process got formal from Zawya's side. They hired a bank, they put someone on it. We were now dealing with a professional, entity that was able to speak to us about the process and the way they were going to run the transaction. For a large strategic buyer, global buyer, that adds a level of comfort or confidence to the process, which is important, right? A lot of people say, I use banks, not important, they take fees, etc. Yeah, there's a lot of merit, and you can diss banks quickly, but I honestly think they also, if you're looking to target multinationals or globals, having them play that role is important, because they come to you with a proper setup and a proper process that makes you interested. Right.
We're in the post-crisis phase now, and the sale process is still going ahead. What difference to valuation did the crisis make? Ihsan, yeah. Sorry, Ihsan.
Well, there was two issues. One, the business itself got affected because we were selling, most of our services were sold to investment banks and investment companies, which were post-crisis took a hit. So fundamentally, the business went through a rough patch, if you like. And then overall valuations went down. The multiples, there were crazy multiples in 2008. People were just paying.
We had seen some very big ones, hadn't we? Mach 2 went for. Right. I mean, I'm not sure what it went for, but the reported figure was somewhere $170 million or something like that.
Yeah.
Were you asking more than
that? No, the number is lower than that. Yeah,
okay.
I could tell you that. But basically, look, these were the two factors. There was there was a change in the business conditions, and then the valuations multiple went down overall. Obviously, as a business, we cannot be compared to Maktub, because Maktub is a consumer-based business. Yeah. We're a B2B business. We're basically a corporate-based subscription service.
Okay.
So you have it's a different ballgame, all speak.
Basil, what were the overriding factors determining your valuation, i.e., how much you were willing to pay? What did you base that valuation on?
So, I mean, I think the business had a very good subscription, recurring, very good cash flow, if you like, in the sense of being able to bring in the money. I mentioned already about good customer lists. That meant that those clients were plausible customers who we know would pay their money and dues for the business. So I think overall, we were very concerned about the revenue stream and how resilient that subscription business is and what future it has. That was probably the biggest determinant of the valuation. On the cost side, it wasn't as important because we are in the same business, if you like. So there's quite a bit of overlap in terms of what Zawya and ThomsonReuters does. So we understand the costs. We also know how to manage those costs quite well. So we have a lot of complements, if you like. So we had to look at the cost base, obviously, to determine a margin, but the cost base wasn't the biggest driver for us in the decision-making process.
But there were overheads that you could...
There were overheads we could take out. There were costs, there's synergies. There's all sorts of things that you can do on that side. The biggest factor, and the one that got debated the most at the Corporate Investment Committee when we presented Zawya, was actually the goodwill element. And the goodwill of the brand, and the goodwill of the customer list, the goodwill of the technology. So we looked at goodwill a lot. And I can't undervalue or can't understate to you as entrepreneurs here today or VCs who are running some of these businesses, how presenting the story and how you present the way the story is positioned is important to the acquirer, right? So Zawya has an incredibly strong brand, and probably the goodwill element outweighs the book value, if you like, of the business, because it was well known. It was a first mover. It was everywhere you went, every event, every corporate event, business event, they had managed to barter their way into it somehow, and that meant that they were able to establish their brand quite a bit. So how you tell your story, sometimes people think, I'll just put together a presentation for investors or an acquirer, and my vision is, and they'll copy the vision from the internet somewhere. That's really, for a strategic buyer, that's really a tragic mistake. You have to know your story. You have to live your story. And Zawya is probably one of these few companies that lives and breathes what it does. Right. In fact, they call themselves Zawyans, which we had to turn to, you work for ThomsonReuters.
Zawyans.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's how strong the employees feel about the brand, and that's important.
So tell me, Ihsan, in June 2012, last year, the deal was done. The price was paid. It sounds like the final stages of an entrepreneur's dream. You started this thing up. You put a lot of hard personal work into it. You found a big, rich multinational to come along and pay multi-millions for it. This question always occurs to me. Did you ever think you could have got more?
Oh yeah, absolutely, of course.
So why didn't you pay more, Basil?
Would you have paid more, Basil?
Would I have paid more money? Yes, absolutely. We would have paid more. Easy to say now. No, I mean, honestly, I think that we can talk about the deal process, and half an hour is never going to do justice for this transaction. But there were lots of reasons why it ended up being the way it is. There's a bank. There was changes on people being involved in the deal. It took longer. Things played out the way they played out, right? And you can never sort of say, but if what would have happened, who knows, right?
We're happy. I mean, as founders and shareholders are happy that first we got a fair price. What we thought, how much more would you have paid? But it's there and thereabout. We also are happy that the brand is still there. The company is still going. It hasn't been taken down or hasn't been, if you like, fully sort of swallowed up by the bigger.
Well, let me ask you about that, Basil, because there are examples in corporate history of very valuable brands being taken over by larger companies, and eventually the smaller, perhaps more valuable brand disappears. You have maintained Zawya for the 18 months or so that you've owned it. What will the case be, say, in 10 years' time? Will there still be a Zawya separate website or a separate brand within Thomson Reuters?
Yeah, before I answer that, let me just say something about the earlier question. I'm actually very happy and very proud, both as a person from the region, that we bought Zawya and that the company paid this money. And we would have paid more, and I would have fought for it, if for nothing else, that it's a great success story for the region, and it really shows what can be done, right? So I just want to sort of state the human element of this deal. It played an incredibly big part to the whole transaction, and one of the reasons why we wanted to tell the story today, and I think it is an important story to tell, is people read headlines but forget that there's a whole history behind it, and for every entrepreneur, that history is important, and that story is important. In regards to the brand, like I said, goodwill was important, brand is important. A good thing about Thomson Reuters is we are a collection of brands. That Thomson Reuters is the corporate holding, if you like. We have Reuters News, we have Icon, which is our product in financial markets, Westlaw, which is our product for the legal markets, OneSource, which is our product in the tax. We have many brands. Zawya right now is our brand for the region as a mid-tier offering, and we're very proud of that. It's a great brand, well established, well managed, and kept its reputation always at the highest level. But also equally, it gives us a way to connect to the local audience, which Thomson Reuters wouldn't have. So you win, both sides win, and this theme of both sides winning was always a very important part of why the transaction, finalized.
Did you say whether it would be there in 10 years' time?
I didn't, but
no,
I think, and I think the answer is no one can predict. I can't tell you if it would be there 10 years' time. There's a lot of reasons why companies keep brands, take away brands, and move and manage them. For the foreseeable future, it's a brand that we operate with. We continue to invest into the brand and into the company. We've launched several new products under the Zawya brand. We're launching another one next month under that brand. So it's a story, it's a very important positioning for the company to be local. That's what this is about.
Okay.
Or regional, if you like.
Ihsan, it's not the end of the entrepreneurial story for you, because you've done other things since Zawya was sold. Can you tell us about those?
It's the start, actually. Well, it's not the start. It's the second coming, if you like. So with some of the money that Basil paid, basically, I took it and put it in the consumer space. So we set up an investment company with some of the actually Zawya, the other Zawya co-founders. So we basically we invested in 3 companies. One is called Laymoon.com, which is in the career space. It's in jobs and courses. One is it's called Round Menu in the restaurant reservation space.
Round Menu.
Yep. And finally, you got a gift, which is a site that basically allows you to buy a gift card for your friends and send them through email. So basically, we moved, we kind of shifted strategy from B2B to B2C.
Right.
And I have to say they're all doing well and growing very nicely.
Do you see any further opportunities in the digital media market?
I mean,
is there another Zawya?
Oh, definitely. But again, my focus now is more the consumer side rather than the B2B. I agree with the previous panels we had earlier today that there are some big opportunities, especially in media. Actually, I mean, I think the fact that the content to consumer ratio in the Arab world is so high that it provides a lot of opportunities for sort of new media startups to take advantage of that. So there are quite a lot of opportunities.
Still opportunities in media.
And also in sort of digital markets. But I think one has to choose those carefully.
Right.
Yeah.
Thomson Reuters obviously agrees that there are opportunities in media. Tell me, is the Reuters brand is, of course, decades, centuries old, and is an integral part of the Thomson Reuters business. We talked about brands disappearing today. Is there ever any of that possibility?
In terms
Reuters?
The Reuters
fading
brand.
Away? Yes.
No, absolutely not. I mean, Reuters brand is a multi-century-old brand that has its roots established, its values about transparency, around openness, around agility, freedom from bias. Those brands are everlasting. I don't see under any circumstance, the Reuters brand. In fact, when Thomson did buy Reuters, it's such a powerful brand that it added it to its own corporate name, if you like. So it tells you something about that. Brands are important, and this region has plenty of them. I think there are stories, though, that need to be better told.
Okay. I think there was a question. I saw a man there with his hand up. Yes. Do we need?
Yes, hello, Ivan from ACAST. I just want to ask Jawad, how did he feel at the moment when he was refused first time, then when his free subscription was cut off? How was your feeling then? How was your feeling then? How were your finances then? Did this matter to your family, your private finance? And at the end, did you manage, when you sold the company for some kind of money, did you, because there was a crisis, it wasn't 500 million as you planned and as everything, did you manage to take every money invested back and earn some money more?
Yeah,
you were developing brand for 10 or 12 years, is it? So.
That's right.
You spend a lot of money, a lot of work. Did you manage to get back all that money and to earn some more money?
Okay, so
but first about feelings.
Yeah, okay. You start the feelings. The feelings were obviously of frustration. So after the 10 minutes call with Basil, just to hear that the Middle East is so basically, I was very happy to find an Arab name in Silicon Valley that can relate to a Middle East potential startup. But within 10 minutes, that hope sort of evaporated. It was, yeah. I mean, it's kind of okay. You know what? It grows your resilience. So it is frustrating. Then they decided to compete with us, and that was also very frustrating. They cut off the news, the stock market data. But also it pushes you. So when they did that, I decided to go to Dow Jones and cut a deal with them to bring them down to the Middle East and do a newswire. We created a newswire called Zawya Dow Jones, purely at the back of Reuters' decision to cut off the supply, if you like. And that actually turned out to be an amazing thing. That actually doubled our business within a year, right? So it's a typical situation where from bad scenarios, something really good comes out. Another twist to the story actually was the guy who did that, who was the CEO of Reuters in the Middle East in 2006, 2007. He
left in 2008.
He left in 2008 because of changes at the corporate level, and I decided to hire him. So he ended up working for me, actually, and telling me all about what's happening inside Reuters, which was very, very useful. And he helped us actually move along the crisis. And then now he ended up back working for Reuters after they bought the business. So it's an interesting twist.
I guess the lesson is keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Right, that is an important lesson. But also the other lesson is, I think I was glad to have a big competitor like Reuters, because it's good to go against big guys that are in your industry that know what they're doing, basically, because then you have to up your game, right? It's actually a bad thing to have weak competitors, because you end up a mediocre kind of company. So finally, when we get through all of these obstacles and we earn their respect through a chip, I was glad that it all happened. It did, yes, of course. It paid for all the investment many times over. It was all worth it.
Are there any other questions from the audience? See, this sign is flashing at me. No?
Can I add a quick word?
Absolutely, Basil, yes.
Corporates are not the enemy, by the way, right? We're not the bad guys here. I think that the story and why we wanted to tell it from the beginning was, yes, you know, we made things difficult for Ihsan, but we also ended up being the company that bought their business, right? And along the way, keeping that relationship and door open meant that we actually, you know, Zawya did better at what it did and became a more attractive business in what it did. And I think the lesson for entrepreneurs out there is you have to learn to keep those relationships healthy and positive no matter what is going on, right? No matter what the challenge is. And I think there's a lot that comes out of it, not just the exit, but also the learning and what you can do better. Corporations, we may be slow in some things that we do, but we're also very effective in things that we do, and there's lessons to be learned both ways.
Yeah, but because, so the other lesson, which is also useful to entrepreneurs, I mean, I agree with Basil and all this, but the other thing is that I don't think you should be scared of corporates, big corporates. So people, a lot of entrepreneurs say, look, I'm not going to go into this space because it's dominated by X and Y giants. But because they are so set, these big guys are so set on their ways of doing things, the entrepreneur will always find a gap or this agile way to do things faster and more efficient. And that is exactly the arbitrage that entrepreneurs should do, you know, between big corporates and startups. It's like, find a way to move faster and cheaper, if you like, to do what they do or fill a gap that they couldn't fill effectively.
Okay.
Yeah, no, look, I got some white hair. I mean, I have to admit, it's probably less than Basil, but
right.
But hey, that's what it takes.
I think I will hurt everybody's feelings if I run over into the next session. So I'd like to thank you both. I think it is a fantastic regional success story. Thank you, Basil. Thank you, Ihsan.